Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. All right, buckle up, because this one is straight up bizarre. Like, did that really just happen? Levels of bizarre. You ever have one of those moments where reality just seems to glitch for a second? That's exactly what OP experienced in our first story. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. She didn't want to buy a mower, she wanted mine while I was mowing. I was outside mowing this morning when a lady stopped me to ask what sort of lawnmower I was using. I believe in being polite, so I turned off the mower and explained it was electric and battery powered. She asked questions about how long it ran off a charge, how long it took to recharge, if it was possible to buy additional batteries, and so on. Pretty much the usual questions I've fielded from neighbors in the past. After I got done explaining what I could, I really have no idea how long it takes to recharge the battery since I just mow until they quit, then put them on the charger overnight to finish the rest of the yard the next day. One of the reasons I like my electric mower, its batteries quit before mine do. The lady nodded and announced that she needed this mower. I smiled and explained that she was in luck, that it used to be that you had to buy the silly thing online, but that there were several hardware stores in the area now that carried electric mowers. I explained how they were a little pricey, but well worth it when she interrupted me and said, "No, I don't want to buy one. I need this mower." She closed her hand on the mower's handle and lightly pulled. I held on and laughed, thinking she was joking around. Then she pulled harder and said, "Let go, please." I politely explained that A, I was actively using the mower at the moment to mow my yard, B, I had no idea who she was or where she lived, so I wasn't going to loan her my mower, and C, that I was going to go back to mowing now, so have a nice day. Good luck on buying one of your own. She let go the instant I turned the mower back on, took a step back, and started saying, "Please, pretty please," repeatedly. I went back to mowing while she stood on the sidewalk watching me walk back and forth. Whenever I came within earshot, she'd hit me with a couple more pleases. I stopped looking at her and shifted to my side yard. I didn't see when she left, but she wasn't there when I next looked. So bizarre. Edit for common questions. The lady in question looked to be somewhere in her 30s or 40s, or maybe a well-preserved 50s, so I don't think she was a boomer. Besides, I'm technically a boomer, and I've never seen her at any of the meetings. I don't have any outside cameras, but neither do any of my neighbors. It's not that kind of neighborhood, in all honesty. On the other hand, I do have an impressive door and lock on my shed, and neighbors with large and excitable dogs on the other side of the fence from it, so I'm not terribly worried. She looked, acted, and dressed completely normal for the area, lucid, reasonable, logical, sane. Well, until the entire "I've got to have this particular mower for free" bit, that is. Otherwise, she could have been from any of the local churches in the area. Not that this is saying much, given my experience with the local church ladies. The audacity of her. Does she believe because she's old she's entitled to anything she wants? My jaw was on the floor reading this. I'd be installing some cameras, maybe a decent security system. That's too creepy and wrong. She knows where you live and may well be back with friends. At least take good photos of valuables. And our second story. Babysit a drunken jerk, get free chocolate. That's how it works, right? So this happened like 4 or 5 years ago. Me and a guy I'd recently become friends with, let's call him Z, were going to a birthday party for one of our mutual friends from high school. First of all, this was the first time me and Z were drinking together, and I'd heard that he could get a bit crazy. Anyways, before the party, me and Z decided to hang out in his apartment and have a few drinks, and we're both in a good mood listening to music, while I'm also checking out Z and his mom's apartment. While doing this, I notice a nice-looking box of chocolates that look like they're quite expensive, but since I'm uncomfortable begging for stuff, even from friends, I don't mention it. This'll come into play later. Skipping ahead a little, we went to the party for a few hours and had a really good time socializing and drinking until it was time for the party to head into town to hit the local bars. So we go there, and it was at this point that Z was starting to get pretty drunk. He couldn't walk straight, couldn't talk properly, and as it turned out, he was a pretty mean drunk to the point of shoving me aggressively and insulting random people on the street. As you might figure out, I wasn't really having such a good time anymore at this point, but since I was going to crash at his apartment, I basically had to babysit him for the rest of the evening to make sure he didn't start any more random crap with people. Later, when most people decide to call it a night, me and Z started walking towards his apartment, and at this point, Z's just wasted. His place was only a couple of blocks away, but on the way there were 2 instances where I literally had to drag him up from the street so that he wouldn't pass out right then and there, all the while insulting me. Finally, I managed to drag him to his apartment, and the second he walked through his doorway, he fell to the floor and immediately fell asleep. At this point, my feelings were a mix of being PO'd and surprised that he turned out to be such an a-hole drunk. Like a totally different person from the cool, laid-back guy I knew from school. It's now around 4 in the morning, I'm still tipsy, and figured since I probably couldn't fall asleep for a while, I'd keep an eye on Z to make sure he was all right, but he seemed fine, considering everything. At that moment, I also realized that I had the munchies. This is the point of my revenge. The big box of your mom's fancy chocolate that was in the living room, gone, mine, and all the wrappers and other evidence neatly placed around the body of my snoring friend Z in a manner that looked like he just ate it all there on the floor. After my delicious feast and genius scheme, I was in a better mood, so I decided to go to sleep. The next day when I woke up, the mess I'd created was all cleaned up, and a very tired-looking Z greeted me. He apologized for the way he acted the night before and that there were parts that he definitely didn't remember. I said there were no hard feelings, but that was the first and only time we went out drinking together, mostly because of our lives going in different places at that point. But he never mentioned a word about this chocolate, and to this day I still get a chuckle out of it every now and then, thinking about what his reaction was when he woke up on the floor with chocolate wrappers strewn all around him. My view is that everyone gets one free pass for acting like a-holes in their lives, because there are some people whose personalities really change when drunk, and they wouldn't know it before actually getting drunk. But if they continue drinking while knowing that alcohol turns them into an a-hole, then they are a-holes. And our last story. They thought it was funny to block my wheelchair access until I got the last laugh. When my husband and I bought our house, we thought we were just getting a nice place to live, not stepping onto the battleground of the pettiest neighbor war. At first, things were actually kind of touching. The house had belonged to a sweet old lady who'd passed, and as we later found out, she was actually a distant relative. Her sister still lived right across the street, and my husband, being the kind person he is, let her and her husband take whatever they wanted from the house and shed before we moved in. And what was the first thing she did to show her gratitude? She trashed her dead sister's kids right to my husband's face. Lovely woman. Moving in took 3 days. During that time, they deliberately blocked the street parking in front of our house, making it impossible for us to park there. Now, keep in mind, they have a freaking 2-car garage and a 2-car parking pad, but instead of using those, the husband insists on parking his damn truck right in front of our house. The real problem? I use a wheelchair. And their selfish parking makes it impossible for me to safely get in and out of my own damn house. The carport isn't wide enough for my wheelchair and an open door at the same time, so street parking's the only practical option for me. I tried to be civil. I left 2 nice notes explaining the situation and politely asking them to park just 1 spot down, and of course they ignored me. I eventually found out that everyone in the neighborhood hates her. Apparently she's been causing drama for decades, and even people 22 miles away know her as that miserable old bat. After they ignored my polite requests, I decided to get a little creative. I put a sticky note on their truck that said we were planning to trim the tree out front and I'd hate to see any limbs fall on their vehicle, and then casually suggested that at any time they could just stop being jerks. They called the cops. So the officer arrives, and guess what? We already knew him. We ended up sitting on our porch for almost an hour chatting about work, life, his health, basically everything except the actual complaint. When he finally walked over to talk to them, the wife went absolutely feral. I'm talking full-blown meltdown. She screamed in his face, waved her hands around like she was conducting an invisible orchestra, and completely lost her mind. The officer, he just stood there stone-faced, not saying a single word. Then he turned and left. For the next week, she was nonstop on the phone, stopping everyone who walked by to tell them how we were threatening them. Meanwhile, we're just laughing our butts off at how dramatic she's being. A few days later, her husband waddles over with an absolute genius proposal. Him, just tell me when you need me to move my truck. Oh, so I'm supposed to announce my schedule over a bullhorn so he can decide whether I'm allowed to leave my own house? Yeah, no. 3 days after that, his wife stormed over, screaming at my husband, Karen, your wife put bird seed on my truck. First of all, what? Second, he parks under a tree. My husband just pointed at our Ring camera and told him, check the footage, dumb butt. So for months, they've been blocking the gate and even going on vacations for weeks at a time, leaving the truck in front of our house just to be jerks. And then, sweet, sweet karma. This morning at 5 a.m., we had a family emergency and had to rush out. For the first time in months, our vehicle was gone from the driveway. And do you know what those petty jerks did? They waited for us to leave and moved the truck back into our spot. Today was different because at 5 a.m., with no one else around to stop us, we finally had it towed. Karen's probably foaming at the mouth right now trying to figure out where her husband's beloved truck went. I'd pay good money to see her reaction when she realizes what happened. Legally, they can't do a damn thing about it. We tried to be nice, we tried to be reasonable, and they chose to make life difficult for a disabled person just because they could. Now they're the ones who have to deal with the inconvenience, and I couldn't be happier. You tried, you really tried to be civil. But nope, these fossils chose violence every single time. And for what? Just to be difficult? Just to prove they could? Some people just don't know how to live peacefully. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.